So this week I have the Miken. I don't even know if I'm saying your username correctly, Rudy. So you're just Rudy now. But you graciously decided to come on and chat with us today. You joined the tournament in August of 2016, but how did you find out about Numerai?
I was looking for a really hard data science or data machine learning program because I was needing to find something that's similar to the work I do. And so all the toy models and things like that were just not doing it for me. So I was looking for something really hard, and then I came across the Numerai just by, I think it was a Medium post or something like that, and I thought, hey, this sounds interesting. Let me see if I can use what I learned at Numerai for my day job.
So let's just change the order a little bit since you brought it up. What do you do for a living?
So I'm an astrophysicist.
So we have a, this group is amazing. Wait a second, let me get this straight. So we have a user who works for NASA JPL. We have another user who does pandemic modeling. And now we have an astrophysicist. And this astrophysicist says that Numerai is hard enough to simulate what he does for a living. Okay, I just want to make sure I had all those things straight, because every time I ask people what they do, I just get blown away and I can't believe it. So please, please carry on. You're an astrophysicist.
Yeah, so I work on the biggest telescope in the Southern Hemisphere, so the Southern African Large Telescope. I'm one of the astronomers that get to use that telescope and send the data to the rest of the world. But in my research, I am an exoplanet astronomer. So I look for planets around other stars.
What?
And so
that's amazing.
Part of my PhD thesis was looking for stars or for planets around these stars, but the signals are extremely low noise. There's a lot of noise and things in it. So I was trying to find techniques to use machine learning to identify the signatures that I was looking for.
Wow.
And so and so Numerai is the data set looked very similar to the kinds of things that I was doing. Like, you're looking for really tiny signals in a really noisy data set. And so this was the perfect thing to do. Yeah.
No, you just got creeped. Somebody found you. Posted in chat.
That's my
I'm gonna have to open that up.
Yeah.
But I'm also gonna let you continue talking about these exoplanets. So basically, you look for aliens.
Basically, yeah.
Does that explain your profile picture?
Yes, it does.
I was gonna ask about that. That was the one thing I was gonna throw at you. Very cool. So astrophysicist, I put in chat, I'm not worthy. I think I should just yield the chair and hand it over to you for a while. So you started in August of 2016 because it was approximately similar to what you do, which is looking for exoplanets. I just want to be clear on that. And so forming portfolios on blind data approximates that process. That's amazing. I mean, I had no idea. That's so cool. And you live in South Africa?
Yep, Cape Town.
Cape Town, all right. I know there's a few people in the audience who are super pumped to hear that. So what time is it there right now?
So it's just after 10 o'clock in the evening, 10 o'clock at night.
Okay. Not too bad. So thank you for coming on. I'll try not to keep you up too late. There was some rumor about drinking while this was going on. I just thought that was a terrible idea, but
I've run out of the quarantine. We're not allowed to buy alcohol in South Africa during quarantine. So yeah, we've run out.
Have you read that alcohol sales in the United States are up like record-breaking amounts?
Yeah, I can't wait for the day that we can go to the store and buy a beer.
Oh man, it's wild.
Yeah.
So I'm still bewildered by what you do for a living. It's just amazing. I'm really struggling to get back on track here. But what programming language do you use and why?
Python. I started Python in my undergraduate. Well, I started off with when I was a kid. I was programming in Turbo Pascal. Then I moved on to Fortran. Then there was some C in there, and then undergraduate was Python. We started off in Python, and I haven't looked back since. So this was 2004 or something like that.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. I mean, this has come up quite a few times. I'd say the majority of people are using Python, but there's still quite a bit of other languages that are being used. But yeah, Python's got the most tools, I think. And like I've said before, it's like a Swiss Army knife. You can do just about everything. It may not be the best scalpel, but it'll get the job done. So can you tell us what your top 3 tips are for the tournament? I'm going to take notes because I have a feeling I'm going to learn something today.
Well, I think a lot of the other people that have been talking we move along the similar vein. The guys have been around since 2016, 2017. All of us have got the same kind of mind. First, take a lot of notes, like really document what you were doing. And that's one of the ones that I didn't do at the beginning, and that bit me so many times.
So there's one.
The second one is, if you have a model that you think is good on your own evaluations on your machine, leave it. Don't let the live data mislead you into where you think your model is going. That's
Patience.
chasing your own tail. It's not worth it. Move on to a different model and work on that one. And I don't know, the third one, I don't know, have a great time. I think I've learned so much. I've learned so much from the people in the Rocket Chat and the forums and things like that. I think really spend time reading the forums and trying to understand them. And yeah, I think that's one of the other ones.
No, that's really good, and I'm glad you mentioned it. Definitely have fun. Sometimes I think that gets lost in Rocket Chat. I try to keep it light as best I can, but yeah, definitely. I include in my students' notebooks when they get set up, like to go and look at scikit-learn, go and read the NumPy documentation, because just the comments in the source code is good in some of those packages. To just go in and read and take advice from other people, like Medium posts and whatnot. But definitely the quality of content in Rocket Chat is really mind-boggling. Some of the stuff I don't even understand.
I mean, there's a couple of things in the forum recently that just blew my mind. I was like, wow, I did not even imagine things like that were real. And and people do this all the time. So I definitely read those, try and get your head around it. And if you learned something, you learned something. If you didn't, you didn't. So
yeah. So take notes, be patient, and have fun.
Yeah,
that's great. I think that's awesome. I'll buy into that. Yeah, it's fun. I don't know. I like solving puzzles anyway. So like I look at Numerai as just a big puzzle, and I know it can't be solved. So I guess they're stuck with me. I don't know what they're gonna do. Like if they had to get rid of me, I don't know. I guess I'd just become anonymous or something.
Yeah.
I have a lot of fun with it. Yeah, that's great advice. Here comes a really big question. This one's gonna be fought over, I'm sure. Who's your favorite team member?
Well, it has to be either Richard or NJ. Cape Town for the win.
Oh, yeah, but you got to pick one.
Okay. Well, just because NJ's got a camera on, I'll go for NJ.
There we go. I think we're tied. Sly Fox and NJ all have the same number of votes. So we're back at parity. That's, by my count, I've got 3 for NJ and 3 for Hansen. Stefan wants to know if there are infinite parallel universes.
It's one of those questions where you can't prove what you're trying to answer. So there might be, but I can't prove it.
So you're on quarantine too. Do you have any tips for handling the quarantine with grace?
We've been in quarantine for a while now. We're in our 7th week, I think. And things are,
amateur.
It's been weird. I live in a fairly small apartment with my wife, and so I think one of the things that we've learned is to give each other space. There's not a lot of space that we can go to,
Yeah.
but try and give yourself as much space as you can if you live with someone else, because it gets close quarters. And other than that, I think is also one of the things that was my saving grace is all the social media and stuff like that. I've just ignored it. There's so much like noise and disappointment and fear and anger and going on that emotional roller coaster. I'd rather occupy myself with something else than going through that.
Yeah, like update your models.
Exactly.
Never really finished anyway, except to be
I've got the multi-model thing to figure out sometime this weekend. So
oh, that's a fun one. It's actually not that bad. I don't know how you set your compute up, but if you just leave in the model ID in the code and just pass it in as one of the parameters to Numerox, it works fine. So there's only one API key call, and that's at the top of your predict script, and then you just change your model ID for each upload.
I'm gonna have to look at it, because my models, I run everything on AWS compute. I have like academic license on AWS and things. So
oh wait, one of those exists? I bet I could get one too.
Yeah. So we get it through our the National Research Foundation or
something. Oh yeah, I won't get that. No, I don't get cool things like that. Only people who look for exoplanets get cool stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's just the way it goes. So what's we've had a lot of requests for changes and things, and they've basically done everything we've asked, which is amazing. But I wonder, do you have another feature request or improvement that you'd like to see for the tournament?
Well, I haven't. You just mentioned the easy way to compare all your different models to one another. That's one of the things that was really bugging me, is just seeing how every single one stacks up against the other. Because having 10 tabs open and trying to flick between them was just driving me nuts. And trying to write the script, I just didn't have the time to go and pull everything from the API and do it myself. So if that's in there, then that would have been my request. So
yeah. And Keno's got a good question. We'll talk about that a little bit later, because I think there's probably a possible path to get that working out. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, I thought about recently building my own dashboard to track the payment side. That's how I do my risk. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is it's too big of a project. So I've got it lives in Excel now, but I sure would love for it to auto update all the inputs that I look at. But you can't make everybody happy, but we'll see how that goes. Do you have 10 models now, or are you still developing?
No, I've got 10 at the moment.
You do have 10. Okay.
So I've also got them similar to what you've got. I've got them clustered in 3 different ways. So 3 of them do very similar things, and then another 3 do 3 similar things, but slight changes, and then another 3, and then there's one that I went for MMC.
Would you or anyone else like to see? What would you or anyone else like to see in a community dashboard that is not shown on the Numerai site? How about everything? The ability to compare 1 to n number of other models on a number of different metrics and all kinds of stuff. Keno, what did you have in mind? Why don't you talk about it a little bit?
So I started a project like about 2 weeks ago, and it's basically because I do a lot of tech writing, like tutorials and stuff. And so I wanted to make one on doing a full stack project. And so as I was doing it, I was like, oh, this would be kind of like cool to do it for like Numerai, because basically, so it has a Python backend and the Vue front end, which is basically what Numerai uses. So so I'm missing now is like the GraphQL library and like actually doing it. So, but I miss Belugas, or however that's pronounced.
Yeah, Beluga.
Belugas Kaggle kernel that that he had, where he did like sort of like the weekly balance of like how how much we had burned and stuff like that, and I think we are like missing, first of all, like a weekly or daily measure of how we're doing as a group or like individually against like benchmarks, which I still haven't identified. So that's one thing that I think that would be cool to be in there. And but I mean, you can do pretty much anything. Like I want to see like how much uh, the average staker has in stakes, how much do they burn, and on and on. And so there's like, I have a list of like maybe like 20 different like data points that I want to get, but you know, I don't have a lot of time these days. So so I was thinking that maybe, you know, we can come up with one chart or like a couple of charts that everybody would like find useful. So and so I don't know what would that be. I'm thinking maybe like performance, and I don't know if it's valid, but if you grab like the average guy and like multiply it by MMC or correlation, you know, that would give you sort of like a graph where like, you know, you see how many people are contributing versus how many people are not contributing to the meta model, and that way you can sort of like find yourself in there and see where you want to go or how you can improve.
Yeah, I think, Keno, the biggest risk is that if you ask everybody what we want and we're all data junkies, the list is infinite. Like,
well,
you'll never be able to get everything in there. And what about open sourcing it? And we could all.
Yeah, no, it's going to be open source. So,
well, shoot,
so,
yeah.
but
throw GitHub up and we can all pop in and put metrics in there and stuff.
Yeah, so the way I'm thinking is like, but the thing is that it's going to be kind of weird, like open source, because again, I don't have much time. And so, but basically, you would have to have like a GraphQL query and then sort of like a chart. If you give me those two things, so based on the data that the GraphQL query like gives you out, and then you tell me the chart data points, and I can do it like, you know, in 5 minutes. So,
cool.
I mean, but again, you know, it's like I'm probably like 2 weeks away from like releasing anything, like one chart. Maybe.
That's 2 weeks sooner than I'm going to be able to do it.
There you go. But I know that like Vantratone.
Yep.
And I was thinking of doing something like that. So, you know, if he already has some ideas, you know, like I mean, I'm not against, he can like compete against mine, because originally it was going to be just like a project for my own models. But I don't know, maybe we can, you know, maybe it's something that everybody else would benefit from.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea, and I hope you'll post some stuff in the forum.
Yeah, if anybody has like any ideas, just like shoot them up and say, well, yeah, I would really like to see these that we don't see it.
Cool stuff, you know. Yeah, I look forward to hearing more. There's a question from Anonymous. Does Numerai pay more attention to models with higher stakes when building the meta model? Well, is stake weighted? So technically, yes. Somebody's asking for my opinion on the recent discussions surrounding the MMC metric. Well, I'm just waiting and watching. I don't really have an opinion yet. I kind of want to see how this plays out. I want to see, there's two things I'm looking for personally. One, how are my models doing on this new validation 2 data? That's what I'm really waiting on. And the second one is, how many people are going to change their models to chase MMC, right? And I don't know. I just assume that my correlation with the meta model will drop and my MMC will increase. And that's my hypothesis, that people will begin chasing MMC. So if I see that on my stable model, which has always had greater than 95% correlation with the meta model, then I'll know basically that the shift is happening. And so for me, that's a good thing. I don't have to do any work, right? Because then my model becomes more unique. On the flip side, if nothing changes for me, well, I don't know. I'm going to have to make a decision. Do I stick with correlation or go for MMC? Several weeks ago, Mike put up a post showing that MMC was more profitable for the top 100 user than correlation, but this high correlation regime has stuck around. I think that's probably longer than any of us thought of. And so, Mike, maybe you could, have you done any other analysis since then to look at the comparison, or?
Just very brief. Yeah, I mean, the correlation scores of everyone's models have been so high over the last like 5 weeks. Yeah, MMC doesn't look as good over the last 5 weeks as it did when I did that analysis like a month ago. But it will be. Yeah, I mean, if that continues, if you think it's going to continue, and so you keep staking on correlation, that also tells us something as well, right? That you think that these models are very good, and it's going to be very hard to find something that's unique going forward about them. So I mean, that gives us information. If you look in history, it seems very unlikely that it might continue like that.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, we really don't know, and we're excited to kind of see where it goes.
Yeah.
I will say what you can do to kind of look at the profitability is you can look at the reputation, your MMC reputation versus your correlation reputation. And if your MMC reputation is about half or better than your regular reputation, then it's an indicator that you might should be staking MMC. That's kind of a quick check you can do.
Does the meta model perform that well so that Numerai can keep paying data scientists when they run out of their NMR reserves? Well, the whole point of this entire thing we're doing is to increase the performance of the meta model in such a way that that Numerai pays us more. It's a positive feedback loop. So by the very nature of us doing well, the payout will increase. Also, if their AUM gets really high, let's just use a fake number, who knows, $100 billion assets under management, if they take a 1% fee to run this fund, which is common, that's probably on the low side in some cases, take 1% just to keep the doors open, I guarantee you some of that's going to come way to the users. Do you or anybody think that these high correlations, which may be relatively formful, or I'm not sure I get that, formful or predictable market behavior, represent some sort of back to the basics behavior from traders and investors as reaction to COVID shock? Actually, Venturetron, I think it's just the increased volatility making quant models more profitable. That's my guess. But I think the reason our correlation is higher is because these quant signals that we are loading on in our models, if you look at it like a factor model, we're loading on factors that are very performant in higher volatile times. And since the training data is neutralized against volatility, all those stuff Richard was talking about in previous weeks, since none of that shows up easily in the data, somehow models are picking up that and we're able to trade on it. That's why I think that we're very profitable in the past 5, 6, 7 weeks, and we rebounded so quickly from that high correlation sell-off event, because then the quant signals kicked in and things are working from a quantitative perspective. What happened at the start of Kazutsugi? Were eras 168 through 171 outliers? Yeah, because when I look at my own performance, I look at the start of Kazutsugi, it looks like a shit show. Like, whoa, what happened there? Like, was I just really bad? Well, I didn't change anything, thankfully, but I was sure scared. So who's here? Who can I pick on? I don't know. Mike, have you learned anything since you were there? I mean, you were still a user back in those days.
Yeah, I mean, we look at it because like we do get everyone's predictions every week, like on the live data now, like for the test. And that data is included in the test, or it was before validation too. So we're always kind of looking at that drawdown as sort of another kind of benchmark to see how people would perform in that like really hard time. But no, like as far as I know, it wasn't any specific, wasn't like a bug or anything like that. It was just the market acting like we hadn't seen ever before in the test data up to that point.
Just not representative.
Yeah, really bad timing that it seems like it correlates with the start of Kazutsugi, but that's completely coincidental.
Joe is asking, when will Numerai change the current training and validation data sets and move on to the next tournament? And by the way, thanks for doing this weekly office hours Zoom. You're welcome, Joe. I have a lot of fun with this, so I hope everybody else does too. Well, I don't know. I think the data is pretty good, but Mike, is there any plans in the pipe for a new tournament or an expansion of the data?
I can take that.
Okay, Richard.
Yeah, we have been thinking about new data, new features, and new targets. And we talked recently about having a target that's feature neutral by design in the target, so that you kind of weren't paid for any feature exposures. And what you would have seen if we had a feature neutral target is that those first 2 months of Kazutsugi would have actually been kind of normal, and people would have made money if they were neutral over that period. But then they wouldn't have made much money in the last month or so, where things have gone really well. So it's really a kind of, and that's why we've given that feature neutral code away in the analysis and tips doc, which you can tweak yourself. You can say, I want to be 50% neutral or 60% neutral. It's kind of like deciding how optimized you want your portfolio to be. And the more neutral, the better to some extent from some perspective of Sharp. However, as many people have noted, they are diminishing returns, and it looks like going beyond 50% neutral starts to really cut into your profitability. So when we thought about this target, which we actually had ready, this feature neutral target, we decided not to release it, and instead try to make a Kazutsugi style target without feature neutrality, but with a few tweaks that make it a bit better and a bit more performant and a bit more generalizable. And one of the kind of ideas we had is we don't really want, first, we don't want to make everybody retrain their models if there's only a minor difference in the target. And then the other thing we wanted to do is, if we gave out the target, we want models trained on the new target to actually do better than they would have even scored against the Kazutsugi target. So in the sense, basically, can we make a new target that's strictly better and kind of wouldn't really matter, wouldn't hurt anybody. So it looks like we have that, and we're like 1 or 2 days away from feeling like it's ready. So it could be within the next week or so that we give those out to as a kind of take a look at this. But we also, want to, Mike Oliver hasn't had a chance to look at them yet, but Ralph's been working on them. And then everybody will be able to start playing with it and see for themselves that it does help things. But we won't switch to payouts being based on it for quite a while. Maybe at the end of June or something, but we'll see. So that's kind of what we think about new targets. In terms of new features, we're not going to do any new features anytime the next month or so. But I think new features maybe by the end of the year, maybe a couple new ones, but we wouldn't want to revamp the whole data set. We like what we have now. And so I don't want people to be like thinking that you might never see feature intelligence 9 again or whatever. All the features we have today will stay there, I think.
The bonus goes away. Luckily, I'm not sure about luckily. I like the bonus. Will it come back in a different form? And if so, how would you distribute this numeraire and what would you reward? Well, that's probably a question for the team, but let me just retain my soapbox for a little bit. I'm a big fan of the bonus because previously, prior to Kazutsugi, you basically were going to expect an average of 0. If you were good, you'd have an average of 0, and the only path to profitability was the bonus. It appears that Kazutsugi is a net positive return without a bonus. Don't know, we need more time, obviously. But getting rid of the bonus destroys an exploit vector, so that's a positive. But how could we bring back the bonus? Well, I think that would be related to model stability. And that's something that's very important to a quant model, is to have stable inputs and outputs. So I don't know how that would be implemented. I've made a suggestion in the past, but it's a little complex. And I hope we can all come up with something to implement that. But anybody on the team want to comment on that? How we could bring back a bonus of some kind?
The kind of principle is always that if we ever make Numerai's tournament easier than the stock market, then there is an attack, kind of. And so it always is going to be very hard. And that's why we just put it on the homepage. This is the hardest data science tournament on the planet.
Absolutely.
It's not really supposed to be, like a way to just earn interest on your NMR by submitting something dumb. And so whenever you give that, then you have problems. So if you ever have a bonus, imagine all stakes also earned a 5% interest or something like that per year. Then suddenly being long and short the same model produces 5% interest. and that's bad. So you have to always have the kind of the p and the 1 minus p, going along the same model as your short. You should not be able to make money doing that, and that's the only way to keep it high integrity, which is much, much better for everyone in the long term.
Any best practices in identifying current regimes and mapping them to past eras to train on? I would very strongly caution you from even trying to do that. Even if you could do that, to accurately train on those eras, the regime may switch before you have a chance to capitalize on it. Also, you're much more likely to overfit by trying to do that. Now, Bohr has come up with a very interesting way of doing that, and I would point you to the forum to look at his presentation on how he looks at easy eras and hard eras. But yeah, as for best practices, I would say the best practice is to just not do it. To build models for MMC, wouldn't it be useful to also know how our models correlate to other users' models instead of just correlation with the meta model? Yeah, like you'd want to know how many people are really, really highly correlated with what you're doing, because you're all fighting for the same pool of MMC. But that's why I argued very early on that there is still a benefit to people staking on basically the same thing, because it's independent validation of the methodology. So that's the bagging approach kicks in there and takes care of that. But yeah, you'd want to know how many other models are similar and just how similar you are. Because if you're in a huge cluster and you're not at the top of the cluster in terms of performance, you might consider switching. But that's almost impossible to know. I mean, I don't know how you'd be able to come up with that. Some supposedly simple linear models are still on top of both leaderboards. Does this mean that Numerai needs a better metric to determine model usefulness? No, it just means that these linear models have found a feature set that's performant. That's fair, right? However they slice and dice their data, the fit for their linear model gives a good result, and I think that's fair. It won't last forever. Rudi will tell you. Zen will tell you. Michael Oliver will tell you. Keno too, he's been around a long time. What incentive does Numerai have to pay users who stake thousands of Numeraire? This has nothing to do with model confidence, but with one's personal finances. Well, Slyfox actually talked about that a little bit, I think last week or the week before. They're all blending together at this point anyway. Like, I don't even know what day of the week it is. If it wasn't for the calendar reminder, I probably wouldn't have opened this on time. But, oh gosh, I already forgot what I was talking about. Oh, so the scale is relative to the individual. So Keno has at risk a lot more Numeraire than I do, right? And that's his risk tolerance. And you know, it's a wealth effect, sure. But like, if you entered the tournament today with $30,000 of Numeraire, or 3 months ago with $30,000 of Numeraire, your dollar entry was the same, but your Numeraire equivalent is different. That's just market timing. I don't think there's anything to be done about that, because you know, some people just have a natural wealth and a higher risk tolerance. All right, everybody, thanks so much. Let's join again next week. We'll hang out for an hour, and that'll be episode 12. It's a full quarter straight. Wow, very cool. All right, thanks again. See y'all in Rocket Chat. Have a great week.